Part 79. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 782. Chapter 781, Take another $200 of my blood. Let's smoke another 200. Gretel threw two treat serious injuries in one breath before he repaired the torn aortic dissection and allowed it to grow back to its original position. Take a breath and lean back. The oak staff stretched out two roots in time, allowing him to lean on it comfortably without lying directly on the ground. Thank God, I was rescued. If in the previous life, the aorta had ruptured and blood had poured into the chest, it would have been too late to save him. If it is just a dissection and the tear is short, interventional means can be used to insert a vascular stent to block the rupture. If the tear is long, it will be necessary to open the chest, apply extracorporeal circulation, and replace artificial blood vessels. Every movement is a race against time and hand speed. The problem is that these actions can only be used when the intima of the aorta is torn and the adventitia has not yet been ruptured. If the outer membrane ruptures and blood flows into the cavity, the person will die before the chest is opened. Fortunately, the healing technique is quite powerful. Fortunately, the little snake can provide illusory vision and directly see the situation inside the body. Fortunately. Is it cured? Have you been rescued? Is father okay? The two knights asked eagerly. Gretel managed to take a breath, opened his eyes and looked at the magic light screen. The blood pressure is still very low, but because the blood in the false cavity is released, it can barely be measured. Heart rate 150 beats/min, breathing shallow and fast. Open the door, he ordered in a low voice. The young knight was stunned for a moment, then jumped up quickly and opened the door of the consulting room. Greet recalled the blood type read by the blood test spell before, and cast a loudspeaker spell on herself. Prepare for blood transfusion. First prepare 1200 milliliter. Type B blood, hurry up. Okay, sir, someone outside immediately agreed loudly. The obstetrics and gynecology department of Oak Grove Hospital has a need for blood almost every day, and it receives a number of blood donors on a daily basis. At this moment, Greet shouted, and a security guard immediately ran out to call someone. Come here. 6 blood donors. Type B. Hurry up. A series of footsteps cluttered away. Greet glanced at the screen and signaled the two knights, one to carry his head and the other to lift his feet, to move their father onto the treatment bed. Greet himself poked the oak cane to the side and used it as an forestand. He quickly dispensed Ringer's solution and opened the veins. Normal saline was injected into the blood vessels, and soon the blood pressure rose slightly. 75/35, although it is still very low, it is a thrilling low, but at least it is not going to kill you in a minute. Greet drove the little snake through the patient's body, carefully checking every possible problem. Not long after, footsteps outside began to sound chaotically. Boss! It's coming, it's coming. The young knight standing at the end of the bed, relatively close to the door, immediately looked out. First there was a washerwoman, drifting in and almost bumping into him. Looking further ahead, the washerwoman was held by a barbarian security guard with his arms outstretched like a hawk catching a chicken. Send him to the consulting room and hit the floor. Boss! Here you go. Do you want to draw blood now? Transfuse her blood. The two knights stood upright together. The washerwoman was short in stature, with a sallow face and thin muscles, and she looked light and airy. Then he turned to look at the necromancer who had followed him, and the huge needle in the necromancer's hand. Will she die if so much blood is drawn? Okay, even if you don't die, will you get seriously ill? The middle-aged knight looked at the magic light screen, although he could not understand anything, with a worried look on his face. The young knight has begun to roll up his sleeves and expose his arms. Can you lose to me? She looks like this. Lose to me, the washerwoman suddenly said. The voice was sharp, shrill, and trembling. Losing to me? Well-meaning master, please lose to me. I managed to get in line with great difficulty. As he spoke, he struggled desperately from the hands of the barbarian security guards and stretched his arms with rolled-up sleeves towards the necromancer. The movement was so big that he almost hit the tip of the needle and made a cut on his arm. Please. I'm here. Without my blood, the debt can't be repaid. The children at home are waiting to buy food. This. The young knight was stunned for a moment, turned to look at Gretel, retracted his hand and tried to pick out his pocket. Greet sighed and waved at them. Draw her blood. Yes, the necromancer who followed and was responsible for drawing blood had a cold expression and his movements were clean and neat. Draw blood, bottle it, throw anticoagulant spells. Gretel took the blood bottle in his hand and explained softly. Blood transfusions between blood relatives are more likely to cause problems than between strangers. Therefore, unless there is no choice, blood transfusions between blood relatives are not recommended. Then she. The young knight still looked toward the door worriedly. 200 milliliters of blood was taken from the washerwoman, but she still refused to leave. Holding the cotton ball on his elbow with one hand, he looked at the necromancer eagerly. Let's smoke another 200. Let's smoke another 200. I'm very strong. It's no problem if I smoke 400. No. You don't weigh enough. Get out, next. The necromancer shouted loudly. Without thinking, the barbarian security guard stretched out his arms, pulled her out, and pushed another one in. The washerwoman who was pushed out was dancing and being dragged out of nowhere, and she was still shouting. Let's take another 200. Let's take another 200. The young knight stared at Gretel. The middle-aged knight looked intolerable, but he grabbed his younger brother and pulled him aside. Stop talking. Mr. Master, he has nothing to do. From the short conversation, it can be heard that the Oak Grove Medical Center paid people to donate blood, and paid a lot of money, otherwise the washerwoman would not be like this. But no matter how much he gives, he cannot save every poor person. Even if these washerwomen want the opportunity to donate blood, they may have to donate blood and be exploited. However, how much can a medical center do? Even they cannot ensure that all the people in the territory are fed and clothed. The two brothers stood side by side and looked towards Gretel. Greet's face was full of reluctance, but he didn't look outside again. He just stared at the old knight intently. Disinfect the vein, connect the blood bottle to a vine, connect the vine to a needle, and throw a higher demonized weapon at the needle. Poke into the vein and fix. Staring at the bright red blood flowing into the old knight's veins and seeing his vital signs gradually recovering, he had time to summon the silent phantom and explain to the two knights. Your father, the blood vessel connected to the heart was broken just now, and a large amount of blood poured out of the blood vessel and flowed into the chest. I just used treatment to repair the blood vessel, but treatment cannot create blood out of thin air, so I need to inject someone else's blood. A tube of blood, another tube of blood. Greet stared closely at the magic light screen and continued to transfuse 800 ml of whole blood to restore the old knight's blood pressure to the normal range. After looking at the electrocardiogram for a while, he took 2 steps back and sat down. I have been rescued for the time being, but please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. I made buns and bean products today. I hope the buns will arrive soon and the bean products can be made into balls. It's been 5 days, why haven't the peach and plum bread arrived yet? Also, thank you to the government for sending the second batch of supplies, 5 kilograms of rice. I'm so depressed today. This chapter about blood donors is so depressing. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 783. But The middle-aged knight has experienced a lot and has seen a lot, so he is relatively stable for the time being. The younger knight had already shouted. After a high-pitched voice, he glanced at his groggy father and quickly lowered his voice. But is there still danger? Also Greet nodded solemnly. While looking at the ECG, blood pressure, blood oxygen, and many other displays, he quickly used his hands and feet to grow vines and assemble the drainage bottles. Then, throw a higher demonized weapon to the puncture needle, and then throw a barbarian bull power to yourself. Disinfection, local anesthesia, 1, 2, 3, puncture. What are you doing? The young knight lost his voice. Such a big, thick needle. Just stab someone in the chest. What is this for? Impale someone? Will it kill you? He reflexively moved forward to stop him, but as soon as he moved, he was already stopped by his brother. The middle-aged knight stared at the movements in Greet's hands, his heart pounding, but he firmly stopped his brother. Edward, don't move. Don't hinder the mage. This is a needle. Steel needle. As soon as you stop him, Master Mage's hand will slip, and everything that is fine will become a problem. Besides, my father fell down just now, and this Nordmark mage rushed to save him, looking even more anxious than us. If he hadn't brought people back one by one with healing techniques and ordered blood transfusions, the old father might have been favored by the god of war at this time. Such people will not harm us. Gretel looked around and listened in all directions, and then he put a layer of high mage armor on himself. I don't blame the patient's family for being frightened. The 4 major surgical procedures, chest, abdominal, lumbar, and bone penetration, all look thrilling. It's not like the intern who is so skilled in his skills has broken a blood vessel and poked a patient out of a pneumothorax for the first time. This shot is a sure shot. It seems that the power and sharpness brought by barbarian power plus advanced demonized weapon are enough to deal with an 8th level knight. The puncture needle in Gretel's hand was inserted steadily. Soon, black and red blood gurgled from the old man's chest. This is the blood that spurted out from the previous rupture of the aorta. Gretel stared at the chest bottle that was soon half full, silently calculating the amount of drainage, and occasionally glanced at the blood oxygen saturation next to him. If you don't drain it out and leave it in the chest, it will suppress the lungs and prevent them from expanding, which will affect your breathing. Look, after the drainage is out, the blood oxygen saturation will go up a little. 2 knights, 4 eyes, stared at the breast bottle without daring to blink. The young knight whispered. There was so much blood just now. Such a big bottle is almost full. They have also been on the battlefield and killed people, and they have a rough idea of how much blood is in a person's body. If such a bottle is full, the person will probably be half dead, if not dead, right? That's not all. Gretel prepared a small bottle of potassium chloride solution and handed it to the middle-aged knight. Feed your father. Do what? Both blood potassium and blood sodium are low. Well, that means there is something missing in the blood, which will make the heart stop beating. It needs to be replenished. Hurry up. When he gave the order, the 2 knights did not dare to say a word. They helped the old man up and gave him medicine. After a mouthful of potion entered his throat, the old knight's face suddenly wrinkled, shaking his head to avoid it and rejecting it. Even though the 8th level knight was confused, his strength was still there and he almost threw his 2 sons away. In an emergency, it was Gretel who quickly used a tranquilizing spell to control the old man, without even throwing away the chest bottle. The 2 knights were busy for a while, and finally waited for the old man to calm down and continue working. The young knight asked in a low voice while feeding. Why do you need to drink it? Can't it be injected directly into your blood vessels? Obviously, I lost so much just now, and there is something missing in the blood. Wouldn't it be better to just lose it? Because it's so low that it's very urgent, Greet replied with pointed ears and without raising his head, intravenous infusion or intravenous push of potassium chloride is very painful. If you can take it orally, just take it as much as possible. In the previous life, even if it was a lethal injection, an anesthetic had to be injected before potassium chloride was injected, otherwise it would be inhumane. Potassium chloride intravenous injection is so painful. As for intravenous infusion, from time to time patients take the initiative and increase the speed of intravenous infusion. Then, because it was too painful, I complained to the medical staff, "I'm used to this, I'm used to it." Gretel answered as he threw out the mobile tower spirit, connected it to the golden treasure box, and then stuffed the magic crystal behind the old man's back. The second shot of detection magic was thrown out, and he took a closer look at the chest radiograph. Well, the pleural effusion is about 500 cubic centimeters larger than when it was delivered. It is probably the blood that leaked out before. Based on the amount of effusion, another chest bottle will be needed. 2 full breast bottles filled with blood were placed side by side on the bedside table. Gretel took out the third breast bottle and handed it to the young knight. "Secure it. Don't move it. Don't let the tube come out of the water. Don't let the chest bottle go higher than the old man's chest." "All right, definitely." The young knight squatted down obediently, holding the breast bottle and shrinking into a potato beside the old man's bed. Sometimes he looked up at Gretel, sometimes at his father, and sometimes at the 2 breast bottles next to him, his eyes full of awe. There was so much blood. And they all come out from the chest, not a drop of it leaks out, and you can't even see it. If it were them, they would only know that the person fell down and have no idea what the problem was. If he were in the military, he would probably only tear up scrolls of divine magic, feed him holy water, and then resign himself to fate. Fortunately, this gentleman was rescued. As expected of the Nordmark mage who wrote the battlefield first aid manual, which was preached to them by the priests of the temple of the god of war, and practiced with them. Really awesome. The fluid collected from the third breast bottle gradually became lighter in color and less in quantity. Greet looked at the drainage volume of the chest bottle for a while, then paid attention to the blood oxygen saturation and electrocardiogram, clapped his hands, and stood up straight. The most serious point has passed. Next, what we need to consider is why this condition occurs. How? The 2 knights asked together. Greet stared at the electrocardiogram with a serious expression. When the aorta is torn to this extent, generally speaking, the blood pressure will be very high and there will be severe pain in the chest and back. Now the old man's blood pressure is not high when he is admitted to the hospital, and he does not feel pain. This situation is not normal. The cause is not found out. Something will happen again in the future. Based on his past clinical experience, aortic dissection without chest and back pain will have certain causes, such as older age, type 2 diabetes, severe hypothyroidism, slow response, etc. What's going on with this old man now? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 784. Aortic tear, severe pain, blood pressure, cause. The middle-aged knight and the young knight looked at each other, and they read confusion in their brother's eyes at the same time. Do you understand these words? I do not understand. Have you heard of it? I haven't heard of it. The 2 of them looked at each other, then turned back and stared at Gretel eagerly. Maybe the caster, the healer, talks like this? After all, they often don't understand what the magicians in the team say. As soon as they turned their heads, the 2 of them said "Oh," and shouted in unison. "Mr. Master! What are you? On the treatment bed, the old knight frowned, tossed, and turned, and moaned softly. The two knights stared at their father for a while and asked cautiously. Mr. Master, you, cancel the tranquility spell, why cancel it? My father has been suffering for so long, and finally he found a calming technique that can relieve him for a while. Well, it's cancelled. Gretel stared at the old knight's electrocardiogram and thought hard. While debating the cause of the disease, he answered fluently. This thing is always working, and it doesn't do any good. It's not easy for the healer to see any changes when the patient is under anesthesia or confinement. Although there are these He pointed at the flickering light screen next to him, with electrocardiograms, blood pressure monitors, and blood oxygen magic lined up, displaying the patient's condition at any time. However, nothing can compare with the patient's own reaction. Each of these subtle signs must be considered by the healer. Alas, my heart rate is still not very good. After all, I just had a massive hemorrhage and shock, and my hypokalemia and hyponatremia have not been completely corrected. Based on previous examination results and his clinical experience, this patient could theoretically encounter n kinds of death possibilities. Disseminated intravascular coagulation. Malignant arrhythmia caused by hypokalemia. Cardiac tamponade. Pheochromocytoma crisis. Large-scale cerebral infarction or cerebral hemorrhage, involving vital centers. Outflow tract obstruction. Acute pulmonary embolism. Acute myocardial infarction. I just had an acute aortic dissection and it has been repaired. I also scanned the aorta and there should be no possibility of aortic sinus aneurysm rupture. But all other things are possible, and we need to be vigilant about all of them. Before he could figure out the reason, the old knight suddenly opened his eyes on the treatment bed and muttered vaguely. Where is this? I'm fine, I want to go back. Father! Father, wake up! The middle-aged knight was the first to pounce. The younger knight slowed down for a moment, also holding a breast bottle, and a head popped up from the side of the treatment bed. You can't go back now? We just saved him after losing so much blood. The master didn't say you can leave. Let me go back. The old knight suddenly lost his temper. He waved his arm vigorously, and Greet felt a hoo in his ears and a strong wind howling. Immediately after there was a loud bang, the middle-aged knight fell backwards and hit his treatment table. The heavy basswood table collapsed on the spot. Gretel. This is what rich clinical experience cannot cover. In the previous life, although the patient could fight, he could not fight to this extent. Also, you, the patient's family members, are too weak. You are already middle-aged, haven't you reached level 8 knight status yet? Even if your father slaps you in the arm, you will still be knocked out on the spot. Fortunately, Gretel was standing at the end of the bed, still a little away from the patient's attack range. With quick eyesight and quick hands, he quickly cast a tranquilizing spell. The magic confinement was thrown over, and the effect was immediate. The old knight instantly fell on the bed, motionless. This, Mage Nordmark, I'm sorry. The middle-aged knight stood up awkwardly from a pile of broken logs, limping back with an embarrassed look on his face. Gretel waved his hand carelessly. It's okay. Remember to pay for the table later. I'll wipe it. Amid the middle-aged knight's repeated I'll pay. I'll pay, Gretel's eyes widened and he pounced forward. Just after such a round of tossing, the waveform of the old knight's electrocardiogram suddenly changed. At the same moment next to the electrocardiogram cloud screen, a hoarse alarm sounded. I go. Ventricular fibrillation. Why did I suddenly have ventricular fibrillation? Father. The two knights pounced at the same time. They were worried about the breast bottle and did not dare to grab the shoulders and shake them desperately. They just grabbed the old knight's arm and shouted. Father! Father, wake up! Father, wake up! Master Nordmark, Do you want to press your heart? Get out of the way, Gretel shouted. Seeing that the two knights did not react immediately, he frowned and pointed. Boom! Boom! Two large hands with transparent force fields rose into the air, one to the left and one to the right, and flew the two of them away. Get out of the way. Keep your distance. Greet ordered sharply. After shouting, he immediately concentrated slightly and mobilized the spell configuration of the electric defibrillation magic. The first time for direct current defibrillation, electric claw unidirectional wave defibrillation 360 joules, let's start. Thank God, this time is not the first time for DC cardioversion, and the thunder claws have an unknown amount of joules. The magic adjusted this time can finally be seen by people. It's not necessary to take off your clothes. I already took them off when I had a bra piercing done before. Coupling agent does not exist, the electric claw blasts it directly. There is no need to attach electrode pads. The structure of the electric defibrillation magic has added an automatic positioning function. The sharp electric light hit the old knight. The old man's strong body rose up, emitting a burning smell, and then fell down again, making no sound. Greet frowned, and the two high mages waved their hands and pressed down hard. Can't be pressed. Even if an 8th level knight loses consciousness, his bones and muscles are still strong enough. The hands of two high mages stacked together cannot output enough power at all. Go up and do CPR. Quick, Greet turned around and shouted. The two knights rushed forward in a panic, posing and pressing down, their whole bodies trembling. Gretel had to direct from the side. Straighten your upper body. Straighten. Press straight down. Hard. It's useless if it's not deep enough. Don't be afraid of breaking your ribs. Don't move your body from side to side. You are saving your father's life, not dancing. Hey, you have a problem with your CPR training. The movements are not standard and it is useless. Under the command of Greet with one command and one movement, the two knights took over each other and finally completed 5 sets of 2 minutes of external compression. When the time came, Greet immediately shouted. Back off. Very good, I obeyed the order immediately this time and didn't let him use the force field to whip. The second DC defibrillation, electroclaw unidirectional wave defibrillation 360 joules, start. Greet recited it silently in his mind, stretched out his hands, and the snow-white electric light came out for the second time. The second smell of burning arose, and the old knight's body moved a little, but there was still no movement. CPR. Quick. Greet shouted a second time. He pushed the two knights forward and performed cardiac compressions on their father. He stood on the edge and quickly threw an inspiration spell to replace the adrenaline. At the same time, he thought quickly in his mind. Why does defibrillation fail? Is the shock time inaccurate? No, this magic has been adjusted many times and should be able to follow the rhythm. Combined with electrolyte imbalance, acidosis, hypoxia and other factors. He quickly drew a drop of blood and cast blood test magic. Blood potassium and blood sodium have been corrected, and there are no abnormalities in blood sodium. Electrolyte imbalance should not be the cause, the pH is normal, and the blood oxygen saturation is also okay. Ventricular fibrillation wave changes from fine fibrillation to coarse fibrillation? Impossible, he kept looking at the electrocardiogram. So, maybe it's related to the energy of defibrillation? After all, the energy required for defibrillation is closely related to the patient's body. For example, when performing electric defibrillation on children, the energy used for the first time should be 2 joules/kg of body weight, and for the second time, the energy used should be 4 joules/kg of body weight. Knight, level 8 knight, with strong bones and muscles, strong resistance to energy. For example, if the electric claw hits an ordinary person, he will be knocked down on the spot. If it hits the level 8 warrior Bernard, he will be staggered and paralyzed, but he can still roar and continue to rush forward. Okay, so please tell me, how much energy should be used to defibrillate a level 8 warrior? I have no data accumulation before. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. P.S. The lethal injection mentioned in the previous chapter used potassium chloride. Some readers expressed shock and asked if it should be potassium cyanide. In fact, it is indeed potassium chloride. Injecting large doses into blood vessels can cause cardiac arrest. The peach and plum bread for my group has arrived. I ordered 2 portions, and it will be no problem until the buns are shipped on the 20th. I read a post on a circle of friends saying that all the Hema guys in Xinjiang City were wiped out and taken away. I'm so scared. If the logistics here tighten up, the group will suffer even if they don't get anything. I quickly made another 15-pound vegetable bag. This is the most indispensable. P.S. Today the community's third big gift package has arrived, including 2 packages of noodles, 2 small boxes of milk, a package of dried tea, a square leg, a package of Shuanghui ham sausage, 2 salted duck eggs, 4 packages of Wujiang mustard. I happened to use the 10 kilograms of rice distributed yesterday to cook porridge and drink it with porridge. It was very good. Thank you to the government. Carrot. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Lan 2020. Chapter 785. The patient with ventricular fibrillation lay in front of him, his life hanging by a thread. The patient's family members worked hard to perform chest compressions, fighting with the god of death, fighting for the old man's life. Defibrillation failed twice. It was suspected that the defibrillation power was insufficient, but he did not know how much power should be used. Gretel took a deep breath. Then, he patted the space bag, released the dark gold skeleton, and raised his voice. Someone can make the decision. Between you 2 brothers, whoever can make the decision, come here. The 2 brothers looked at each other. Then, the young knight leaned down to take over. The middle-aged knight stopped, turned around, and hurried over. Mage Nordmark. Dark gold skeletons passed by him. Gretel followed and shouted, "Take turns with that knight to perform compressions. How deep does he press? How deep do you press? What frequency does he press? What frequency do you press?" Cardiopulmonary resuscitation is very demanding on the doctor's physical strength. According to regulations, it is performed in teams of 2, taking turns. The knight's physical strength may be stronger than that of normal people, but performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation on a level 8 knight is also extremely tiring. Gretel did not dare to bet the probability of successful rescue on the knight's endurance. He watched the dark gold skeleton take over the operation, and immediately turned to the middle-aged knight, speaking urgently. "There is something wrong with your father's heart. The heart has stopped beating at all. He can only rely on external compression to maintain its activity and pump blood to the whole body. But this state cannot last long. Now there is a way, which is to use force. Electricity passes through the heart, forcibly activating it." "Is that what you just did?" The middle-aged knight stared blankly at Greet, with snow-white lightning shining in his pupils. Gretel nodded affirmatively and spoke a little faster. "I just applied the electric shock twice. It may be because the electric current was not high enough, so it was not successful. If the electric current is increased, there is a possibility of resuscitation, or it may directly damage the heart, and I don't know what the correct electric current is." The middle-aged knight reflexively opened his mouth, and not far away, the body of the young knight froze. Fortunately, at this stage, it was the dark gold skeleton taking over the compressions, so there was no rescue accident. The 2 brothers had exactly the same questions swirling in their minds. "Have no idea? How could you not know? Aren't you a spellcaster? Not a healer?" Why, don't you know? But they knew that they couldn't question or even shout out at this time. It would do no good except delaying time and reducing the probability of successful rescue of their father. The middle-aged knight just nodded again and stared at Gretel, waiting for his next words. Sure enough, Gretel immediately took the next step. There are two options now. One is to continue external cardiac compression and add therapy to maintain vital signs until the autonomous heart rhythm is restored, or until the rescue completely fails. The second dash. He quickly glanced at the ventricular fibrillation waves of varying shapes, sizes, and irregular frequencies on the screen, and said in a heavy tone, "Increase the electric shock energy and continue to try electric defibrillation between compressions. Of course, the consequence of this is that the heart may be seriously damaged to the point that it will never be saved." He stared solemnly into the eyes of the middle-aged knight, just like in his previous life, when he explained the dilemma of life and death to his family members. He said it as simply and clearly as possible. "These two options, as family members, I hope you can choose one. Of course, no matter which one you choose, we will do our best." The middle-aged knight stared at Gretel blankly. Bang bang, bang bang, the heart beats in the chest, deafening. 5 steps away, the younger brother was still alternately pressing against the skeleton, gasping for breath. Mage Nodmark threw another healing spell over. White light nourished his father's body, and there were lines and numbers on the light screens next to him. My father lay there unconscious, trembling under the pressure, but there was no sign of regaining consciousness. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He took half a step back and bowed deeply to Gretel. "Mr. Master, we are just knights and don't know how to treat. Please treat according to the method you think may be effective, even if you can't save it." At this point, this middle-aged man who is a husband and father and leads an elite squadron in the army can't help but feel a sore nose. He bowed deeply for the second time, and when his head sank to its lowest point, 2 tears fell heavily to the ground. "We appreciate you too. Elder brother." "Shut up." The middle-aged knight glanced over. Greet tried not to look away and nodded quickly. "Okay. Then I need to know now, how much does your father weigh? More than 200 pounds, right? I'm not sure if it's 300. Well, according to the calculation of joules per kilogram of body weight, the electric shock energy can be increased a little." Gretel quickly converted and asked the most critical question. "How many levels of electrical spells can an 8th level knight resist using his body alone without using his own strength? Is there no problem with the first level?" The middle-aged knight hesitated. "I'm only a level 6 knight. The most I can do to my body when receiving lightning is to paralyze it and catch my breath. Level may 2nd not be able to withstand it? I mean, if you don't fully activate your power, you will be defenseless. That is based on 360 joules, plus the power of first-order electric spells. In other words, the standard version of the electric claw is just a first-order electric spell." Greet calculated quickly in his mind, paying a little attention to the CPR situation. 5 groups per round, 30 chest compressions each, 2 artificial respirations, 20, 21, 22, 29, 30. "Stop! Get out of the way!" he shouted again. As his mind moved, the dark gold skeleton raised his hands flat and pushed the young knight opposite him back. 1 person and 1 skeleton both fell out and left the treatment bed. Gretel quickly adjusted the configuration of the DC defibrillation spell in his mind, increasing the current energy, increasing it, and increasing it. The third DC defibrillation, electroclo-unidirectional wave defibrillation 720 joules, start. The electrocardiogram light screen lights up. On the light screen, when the electrocardiogram waveform reached a certain position, a lightning bolt that was extremely thick and exceeded the upper limit of this first-level spell shot out and landed on the old knight's chest. Burnt smoke curled up. However, Gretel was delighted to find that the electrocardiogram waveform changed at the moment after the current dropped. Sinus rhythm has not yet been restored, but it is very close, very close. The fourth direct current defibrillation, electrocardiounidirectional wave defibrillation 750 joules, start. The fifth time, 780 joules. The three currents fell rapidly one after another. The last flash of lightning ended, and the electrocardiogram waveform finally recovered. Sinus rhythm. Although it is not quite normal, after all, problems such as myocardial hypertrophy have not been solved, but at the very least, the autonomous heart rhythm has been successfully restored, and another difficulty has been overcome. It is said that nucleic acid needs to be done again today, but the community next door hasn't called anyone yet. It's our turn and we don't know if it will be midnight. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 786. The successful defibrillation seemed to mean that death had spared the old knight. Next, Gretel performed a CT scan on him and used a small snake to explore deep into his body. He survived well and did not get sick. No myocardial infarction, no pulmonary embolism, no disseminated intravascular coagulation, no further arrhythmia. Thank God. For 3 hours, Gretel never left, guarding the old knight for 3 hours. 3 hours later, the mobile tower spirit finally calculated the CT results. He asked the mobile tower spirit to play the image seen by the little snake, compare it with the CT calculation results, and explain to the patient's family. Your father's recent slow reaction is due to bleeding in the brain. Look, these spots are dotted with vascular lesions deep in the brain, forming thrombus or microembolism, leading to vascular occlusion. I'm not very good at treating brain lesions. Alternatively, you can take your father to the charm control school, or find a magician from the medical branch to try. The two knights were grateful, took the image copied by Gretel with the chip, and took their father to seek treatment elsewhere. Greet breathed a long sigh of relief, turned around and ran to the Tower of Babel. Teacher. My paper on direct current defibrillation. Can I withdraw it first? What's wrong? The Lord of Thunder looked up from his paper and pushed up his monocle. Behind the glasses, a playful light flashed. It took Gretel nearly half a year to revise this paper in various ways before he finally came up with a final version. I just gave it to him for review, and I haven't found a place to publish it yet. Is it about to be withdrawn? Although he also wanted to take this manuscript back. I am already a level 7 mage. I have been facing ordinary people in the medical field and have not made any progress. How can this be done? You must know that in this world, in the final analysis, powerful people still have the final say. Only when Gretel proves that he has a unique ability to treat high-level transcendent beings that cannot be replaced by others can he be respected by high-level powerful people and have his own independent status. The Lord of Thunder has raised this issue once and doesn't want to say it a second time. Fortunately, now, judging from Greet's words, he has figured it out on his own. The part about high-level transcendent beings has not been added yet. Okay, take it. The Lord of Thunder readily took the paper and threw it back. Do you know how to study next? Greet had no idea. Speaking of which, how do those seniors doing basic research do it? In the previous life, animal experiments could be done first and then human experiments. For animal experiments, electric shock experiments could be conducted directly on animals that were about the same weight as human beings, but now, I'm thinking of finding a bunch of level 1 to level 10 monsters that are about the same weight as a human body, such as stone-skinned pigs, winged sheep, and deer. He reported to the teacher honestly. Do electrocardiograms one by one, test the myocardial current, and then try to discharge. External defibrillation, open chest defibrillation, take turns, and you should be able to get a clue. Fortunately, the CT research project that we had previously cooperated with the medical branch and the necromancy school is still in progress. It shouldn't be difficult to get a few level 5 to 10 monsters to come over. As for levels 1 to 4, they are not expensive and he can buy them with his own money. Now that the shopping is done and the experiment is done, can we still add some food to everyone? The Lord of Thunder sighed silently. If this question is studied by the necromancy school, the answer must be to capture a bunch of enemies or spies and electrocute them one by one. If it is researched by the medical branch, the answer is probably to give the patient an electric shock when he encounters it. If the electric shock is too much, the appropriate energy should be able to be summarized. If it is a temple to study, the temple may pray directly to the gods and try to see if there will be an oracle. Only Greet, a child, would want to catch a bunch of animals and experiment on them one by one. In other words, his previous research route was to try it on animals first. If the animal experiment was unsuccessful, there was absolutely no need to use it on humans. But forget about other treatment methods. Why don't you first find the answer to the problem related to lightning in the evocation department? First go to the Thunderhorn's library and read through all the articles related to the spells Lightning Shock, Electric Claw, Electric Shock Ring, Lightning Beam, and Glory Shield. He endured his complaints and taught his disciples, especially related to lightning damage. Then, go and ask your senior sister for her experience in using electric spells to fight extraordinary beings. Gretel held the paper and ran away with his head in his hands. Sorry, the teacher is a little angry, and the current on the monocle starts to flow. By the way, teacher, don't your eyes feel uncomfortable with the electric light flowing in such a close place? Does it really not cause glaucoma? He honestly swiped his badge into the library and looked for information. Only after seeing this did I realize that the Thunderhorn was indeed the Thunderhorn. It had accumulated enough experience in the use of thunder and lightning magic. Using the electric claw to hit the stone-skinned pig failed. The stone-skinned pig's body is covered with rosin, sand and gravel, and its resistance to electric magic is very high. If it had not been dodged in time, it would have been disemboweled by the fangs. Electric Claw defeated the level 4 Wind Fox and succeeded in one blow. Unfortunately, the current was too strong and the Wind Fox was scorched from head to toe. The intact fur was not recovered. After walking in the forest for 10 more days, the target was successfully hit. Enough prey to pay off that debt. Using Electric Shock Ring as a protective spell to fight against the iron-horned ox is really not a good idea. Even though it was electrocuted, it could still continue to rush forward. If George hadn't pulled me up, I would have almost been killed. It crushes to death. In addition to fighting Warcraft, what kind and level of Warcraft can be defeated in one blow by using high-level magic? There are also a large number of experienced warriors, knights, assassins, mages, priests who have fought against humans. All levels, all professions. How many high-level magics should be used in a sneak attack, in a head-on battle? How many high-level magics should be used when the opponent has full defense, and how many high-level magics should be used when the opponent musters up all their strength? After thousands of years, countless plastic magicians and countless magicians who studied lightning have accumulated extremely rich information. In notes, letters, papers. Gretel spread his legs, leaned his back against an upright pillar, and sat on the floor of the library, watching mesmerizedly. Pieces of information condensed into pieces of data in his mind, and tables were added. All in all, the extraordinary beings in this world, especially the extraordinary ones with combat responsibilities, have extremely powerful bodies and extremely active functions. A warrior above the level of a knight, even if he stands and is struck by others, receiving a first-level electric claw will be paralyzed. When the magicians are at low levels, their physical strength is much worse than that of the warriors. But at higher levels, especially those above level 10, the body that has been infiltrated by elements for a long time will only become more resistant to the same elements. Therefore, if you want to perform DC cardioversion, how should the warriors and magicians below level 10 make adjustments? How should those above level 10 adjust? Forget it, let's go ask senior sister for advice. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Uchiha Kentetsu for the 1000 starting coin reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 787. Little Gretel, ha 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 ha, little Gretel, you are really, ha 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 ha. Senior sister Vilby laughed so hard that her flower branches trembled, and tears welled up in her eyes. After laughing for a while, he paused slightly, thought of something, suddenly started to lift up again, finally stopped again, glanced at Greet, and continued to laugh. Gretel looked at her helplessly. He held his chin in one hand and silently counted his breaths in his mind. 1, 2, 3, 15, 16, 1 minute. 15, 16, 2 minutes. It's been 2 minutes. Why haven't you finished laughing in 2 minutes, senior sister? He finally darkened his face, raised his left index finger, and made a knife gesture on his right shoulder. Senior sister Vilby rolled her eyes at him, her laughter gradually subsided, and finally she raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes. Little Gretel who has never taken risks or fought. Gretel also wanted to say, I have also been on the battlefield, and I have even killed people. After thinking about it again, he slumped down in despair and leaned back in his chair. Is this something to be proud of? Having taken risks, fought, and even killed people, is this something to be proud of? Sorry, he really couldn't agree more. In his values, only what he creates, what he protects, and what he heals is something to be proud of. Of course, in a society, there are always some people who bear combat responsibilities. Those soldiers, those policemen, but fighting is also for protection. They are the strongest shield standing in front of the people enjoying peace. Of course, Greet also understands that the magicians of the plasticity department, as one of the most powerful schools among the 8 schools, have always been on the front line. Therefore, if you are laughed at by your senior sister, just be laughed at by your senior sister. Senior sister Vilby finally finished laughing. He straightened his face and explained to him seriously. Professors of all departments and levels have natural resistance to spells in the library. I think you should have read it. Oh, I have indeed read it, so I won't say more. I want to make sure that they can. If you can't bear it, you have a simpler way. Greet leaned forward slightly, listening attentively. Senior sister smiled. Use mental power. Saying it means not saying it. If my mental power could be so delicate that I could sense myocardial currents, I would no longer have to worry about how much energy I should use. I sit directly in the outpatient clinic and treat patients every day, and my mental energy is directly covered. Your mental strength is not strong enough? You can at least feel whether the vitality of the body increases or decreases after the current passes. If it increases, that's right. If it decreases along the way, then there must be something wrong. The senior sister said confidently. We don't want you to go deep into the, whatever, cells you're talking about. You can cover a piece, a small piece, or the entire heart. This should be possible. It seems to make sense. Gretel was thoughtful. The senior sister smiled and clapped her hands. Okay, you can try it yourself. Recently, they have a group of people working on related topics. Just follow them and get a feel for it. When the senior sister said they have a group of people, she was referring to the high-level mage's own group of disciples. Greet followed her guidance and came to the laboratory, and was immediately warmly welcomed. "Mage Nordmark, you are here. Mage Nordmark, you have to give us some guidance. Mage Nordmark, thanks to your discovery, it will be much safer for us to study electrical magic in the future. Gretel? Look left, look right." The first person to welcome him was a 12th level great magician, followed by a series of 7th level, 8th level, 5th level, and 6th level magicians. Very good, there is finally someone with a lower level than him. Although looking at the ranking and position, some are the disciples and grandsons of the senior sister. After all, they should be his disciples and grandnephews. If he had been in the fairy tale novels he had read before, he would probably have been called Little Master Uncle or Little Master Uncle by these people. Greet shuddered and shook his head vigorously, viciously getting rid of these messy thoughts. Looking carefully again, there is a big white standing in the laboratory. The big white is filled with gloomy energy, wrapped in a zombie. What are you doing? Research on protective clothing. The 12th level archmage, a disciple of senior sister Philby, who just introduced himself as Yanni's foster, replied eagerly. It's the kind of protective clothing you made. The instructor gave it to us and asked us to study its protective capabilities. It's best to lower the price. It has failed until now. You see dash. Greet squatted on the edge and spread out his mental power to cover the zombie. Archmage Foster stretched his hand forward, and with a crackle, an arc of electricity hit Dabai. Greet trembled reflexively. He clearly felt that inside Dabai, a bolt of electric light shot out from a certain point in the protective suit, shooting the zombie inside straight through. The zombie trembled, a wisp of smoke curled up, and it staggered and fell down. I can definitely feel the difference. Even if they are zombies, they have no vitality or cell vitality. If their bodies can withstand such a blow, they can still feel if they are covered with mental power. Failed again. There were laments in the laboratory. Archmage Foster's face darkened. What are you doing standing still? Drag the things down quickly to check and see where the problem is. Master Nordmark, can you please come over and take a look? Gretel. No, I don't want to see it. Current breakdown must be caused by unequal electric potentials at various points. If the electric potentials are not equal, there is a high probability that the conduction is uneven. Either the metal wires inside are not even enough, or one of the metal wires is broken, or the clothes and pants and shoes are not connected anywhere. The amount of work required to lay out the metal wires one by one is really too big. Whoever does it should do it. By the way, what metal do you use? Silver wire. Didn't you use silver wire last time? You can try using copper wire next time. I think copper wire will work too. At least, my wizard tower wire drawing uses copper wire. This wire drawing technology should be very mature and cheap. Use glass. Can you also try wrapping copper wire? Asbestos only acts as a flame retardant, and processing asbestos can easily cause lung problems. If it is processed by the mages themselves, let's try using glass silk. Archmage Foster gave the order, and students immediately ran to work. He himself accompanied Greet and explained to him. We used alchemy dolls before, which were too expensive. Then we used skeletons and found that skeletons are not easy to hit. Now we use zombies, which are much easier to use. We are considering whether to buy more high-level zombies, one by one. Do you want to do experiments? As he spoke, he looked at Gretel with a pointed look. High-level zombies are very expensive. The Nordmark mage has a good relationship with Black Crow Swamp. Can you negotiate an internal price? Today I finally have to do nucleic acid. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. According to the previous 3-zone division, Our community has not had a negative result for 7 days. We should switch to self-health management and be allowed to walk around the community. However, we were not notified. On the contrary, the property management company informed that all group purchases will still be brought to the door of the building by the property management staff, and then volunteers will carry them to each door. So I still stay at home. Dejected. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 788. Chapter 787 One Ring of Magic, Lightning Shield. You develop it, I'll pick it up. Gretel would be happy to go to Black Crow Marsh and negotiate an inside price. However, when he tentatively asked Archmage Foster, "So, how do you describe our project to them?" Archmage Foster immediately retreated and said, "Thank you, no need, Thunderhorn can afford the money. Projects and such cannot be disclosed to the outside world. If you give something like lightning protection clothing to your own people, it is a benefit. If you give it to people outside the lightning branch, it will weaken your combat effectiveness. Before studying its weaknesses and targeted attack methods, at least, apart from developing targeted detection methods, it is best not to leak out the manufacturing method of the anti-electricity suit, or even its existence." Gretel. But there is one thing to say, the Faraday cage, or a miniature version of the Faraday cage, he had demonstrated to the control system more than a year ago, and it can be used to weaken the detection of brain waves. As for when they will expand the Faraday cage to the whole body and discover that it can actually be used to prevent electricity and resist electric magic, Gretel doesn't know. He explained the situation to Archmage Foster. This Archmage, well, perhaps he cannot be called Your Excellency in front of Gretel. After all, he is Gretel's nephew. He immediately deflated in frustration. "So we want to cooperate with the control department? Or?" Greet spread his hands. When it comes to the school's policies, he doesn't understand anything and will never interrupt. It is better for Archmage Foster to discuss this matter with his senior sister. Maybe I need to ask the teacher for instructions. As for Gretel himself, he squatted aside and watched a group of lightning mages constantly repairing the large white piece and throwing lightning upwards. Crack. Well, the output power of the first order electric claw is on the high side, probably, about 220 joules, and it has not penetrated the shielding suit. Crack. It is still a first order electric claw, and the output power is low, about 180-190 joules. This one didn't penetrate the shielding suit, flowed to the ground, and was absorbed by something, maybe a magic circle, or a magic crystal. Crack. Enter the shock ring. Bimax was penetrated, and a bolt of lightning passed through the zombie's body and hit the opposite side. Gretel spread out his mental power, enveloped the zombie, and quickly recorded. The output power is estimated to be greater than 800 joules, the muscles are partially carbonized, and after mental exploration, the carbonization depth is greater than 3 centimeters, along the area where the current passes, there are pinched injuries. Blood vessels, there is no blood flow in the zombie body, and there is basically no liquid, so there is no blood vessel wall damage, blood vessel rupture, blood vessel embolism or anything like that. As for the common intestinal and lung damage due to the large amount of fluid, naturally there is no such thing. As for the heart, I'm sorry, a heart that has stopped beating is almost as damaged as an ordinary muscle, and no additional myocardial electrical disturbances can be observed. By the way, what level is this zombie? Level 2. Someone immediately looked through the records and quickly answered. Level 2 warrior, no special energy attribute. In other words, he was not a warrior who cultivated power in a certain direction during his lifetime, nor was he a warrior covered by divine grace. In conclusion, a second-level warrior cannot withstand the second-level electric shock ring attack. Don't even think about using such high-intensity energy to defibrillate the heart. This zombie is too damaged. Get another one. Get a third level one. Gretel was enjoying herself squatting in her senior sister's laboratory. Of course, his main job is to pick up leaks and race against time to record the zombie damage when the shielding suit is penetrated. Occasionally, I also take the time to make some suggestions. You can try to buy this copper wire. The copper wire you buy has a uniform diameter and the same resistance. Is it more convenient to make a shielding suit? Pay attention to isolation. Pay attention to flame retardancy. The copper wire is very hot when the current passes through it. You don't want your clothes to burn. Or, we can use generators instead of human power, so that the test results are more stable. If people use magic, different people and different control effects will have different results. This last suggestion was unanimously approved by the magicians. Since Gretel came out with the generator, Thunderhorn has found a corresponding point of basic power between the generator and electrical magic. How many times the coil is wound, how big the magnet is, and how fast it rotates are roughly equivalent to several levels of magic. Even the manual has been made. Of course, magic of level 4 and above can only be compared to generators driven by powerful water power by rivers or waterfalls. But the third level electrical magic, the generator in the Mage Tower, can already be replaced. Facts have proved that after setting up the generator and standardizing the voltage, the research and development of shielding suits has made rapid progress. Within 3 days, the magicians have successfully tested how many copper wires are needed for a shielding suit that can resist the first-order electric claw, the second-order electric shock ring, and the third-order lightning beam. How many copper wires are needed? Thin, how to connect, how much flame retardant fiber to add. Gretel was very relieved and very painful. The shielding suit test is completed, which means that his chances of picking up leaks are becoming less and less. His tests haven't been completed yet, and he hasn't accumulated enough data yet. Then, he heard the sorcerer, who was pulling, twisting, and splicing copper wire, and it was really painful. He squatted next to him, patted his head, and provided another idea. Or, you can try to create a magic to turn copper wire, glass wire, or asbestos wire into a shielding suit. Yes. That makes sense. You can give it a try. It is a common method used by magicians to amplify a small amount of materials through magic to achieve the effect of a large entity. For example, the feather falling technique uses a feather, which makes people float and fall slowly as if they have wings. Grease technique, using a small piece of pigskin or butter, can cover a solid surface with a smooth layer of grease. The representative of the mage's power, the famous fireball technique, uses bat guano and a small ball of sulfur as the magic material. Gretel has personally conducted experiments and found that replacing spellcasting materials with explosives can greatly enhance the power of spells. According to this principle, using a small piece of copper wire, a small piece of copper, a piece of asbestos silk, or a small piece of glass as casting materials, can a shielding suit be made? Come on, give it a try. Try it. One Ring Magic, Thunder Shield. Protection System. Ignore the electric damage below level 2, and greatly reduce the electric damage of level 3. Casting materials, a small piece of copper, a piece of asbestos silk or a small piece of glass. Obviously, the success rate of new magic is closely related to the magician's mental power and control. The shielding success rate of the just completed shielding server immediately dropped from 100% to less than 20%. Only Greet was overjoyed. A high failure rate is a good thing for him. The higher the failure rate, the richer the information he collects. He squatted silently in the laboratory, squatting from the 2nd level zombie to the 8th level zombie. The higher the level, the softer and more flexible the zombie's body is, closer to that of a normal person, and the greater the probability that the internal tissues are intact. The higher the grade of soft tissue around bones, and joints, and internal organs, the better the preservation. The losses suffered are getting closer to the real situation. Come on, you do research and development, I'll pick up the slack. By the way, Mage Nordmark, we also have a comparison table of damage sustained by zombies and living people. Do you want it? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Uchiha Kentetsu for the 100 starting coins. What a sin. We have scallions here for 13 UN a pound. When the epidemic is over, I will definitely buy a bean sprout machine. No one can stop me. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 789. With a large amount of data from zombies, Gretel's progress in the project can be described as rapid. Of course, zombies are zombies and cannot become living people. How much current can be used for defibrillation needs to be verified. Greet, how is your research going this week? At the regular meeting, the Lord of Thunder once again called his name. Greet held the half-written paper in his arms, quickly raised his head, and almost pinched the corners of the paper's pages with his fingertips. We need to do some more animal experiments to verify some data. Next, if there is an opportunity to verify it on patients, that would be even better. The data in the book Comparison of Injuries Sustained by Zombies and Living People is indeed detailed enough. However, in these data, the most critical link is missing. Cardiac myoelectricity. Zombies don't have heartbeats after all. Although Brother Lin's teacher, Archmage Edgar, told him that high-level zombies, which refers to zombies above level 10, also have vital hearts, but after Greet borrowed a zombie to study, he became interested in this. The path has lost interest. The heartbeat of high-level zombies is maintained by dark energy, negative energy, or any other energy. Gretel did not detect the presence of electrocardiograms on them. Without electrocardiogram, there is no cardiac myoelectricity. Without cardiac myoelectricity, as an experimental subject, this thing is unqualified. For the final verification work, Greet had no choice but to return to animal experiments. But this time, beside him stood Bernard and Onijin, serving as his loyal assistants. You can't do it without an assistant, it's mainly Warcraft and the like. Gretel can't defeat it, and can't carry it. Adult Bristle Pig, Level 3, DC defibrillation for the first time, start. Experimental Step 1, create ventricular fibrillation. The Barbarian and the Dark Gold Skeleton, one is responsible for carrying the pig, and the other is responsible for tying the pig. The adult Porcupine, which had been cleaned and cast away from the sleep spell, was tied to the experimental table with its hooves in the air. The Barbarian geared up, the Dark Gold Skeleton turned its head, and the mandible clicked. Gretel, I know what you mean is boss, let's do it. You don't have to rush me, besides, even if I kill you, you won't eat it. Bernard next to you will eat it. Gretel used 2 steel needles, one on the left and one on the right, to pierce the left and right sides of the arrow bristle pig's heart. Then, pull through a wire in the mage tower. The current strength is controlled by Moss, to provide DC power, and connect it to the end of the steel needle. Transcutaneous electrical stimulation, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The electrocardiogram on the light screen changes drastically. The QRST wave complex disappears, and a series of rapid and uneven tremor waves with varying amplitudes appear, with a rate of about 300 times/minute. So this is the benefit of using pigs as experimental animals. Gretel secretly praised himself. The heartbeat of healthy pigs averages 60 to 80 beats per minute, which is similar to that of normal humans. The heart structure is the same and the electrocardiogram waveform is similar. Many data obtained on pigs are not very different when translated to humans. Experimental Step 2, DC defibrillation. Get out of the way. After giving the order, Bernard quickly retreated to 3 meters away from the experimental platform. As for Arcane, there is only one skeleton, so it doesn't matter whether he retreats or not. Anyway, with this level of direct current, even if a little bit leaks to it, the dark gold skeleton won't care. Greet quickly pulled out the puncture needle and stretched his palm forward, as if he was holding an electric shock plate and pointing the discharge site at the patient in his previous life. The DC defibrillation spell was thrown out, and an electrocardiogram began to appear on the light screen. A few seconds later, a flash of lightning flashed. The previously obtained data on electric shocks sustained by level 3 zombies were increased or decreased based on the comparison of injuries susceptible by zombies and living people and substituted into the energy required for DC defibrillation. From this, we can get the possible values on the high-level extraordinary person, adjust the spell configuration, and trigger the discharge. Superior. If the discharge is unsuccessful, do a set of chest compressions. Once again, discharge, success. Level 3 Aerobristle Pig, 2 defibrillations in the case of ventricular fibrillation, successful. Consumption, 2 DC defibrillations, second level spell. Gretel quickly recorded in his notebook. And a set of chest compressions, physical. Overall, the consumption is not huge. Greet breathed a sigh of relief and called to his assistants. Bernard, Oniaking, let's bring up another pig. Work harder. At least half of all level 3 pigs will be finished today. What? I have to finish it? Bernard screamed. Gretel prepared 24 pigs in one go. 24 level 3 heads. During the delivery, it took half the security guards of Oak Grove Hospital to herd these pig men into the pig pen under the Mage Tower. Now we have to drive 12, tie 12, and carry away 12 in one night. Thinking about this workload, even an 8th level warrior, a barbarian who is on the verge of reaching 9th level, will still feel weak all over even if there is an elevator in the Mage Tower. Bernard, come on, Greet encouraged him with a smile. If you finish it early, you can kill it and eat it. You also want your compatriots to have a feast of level 3 monster meat, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to kill you. The barbarian muttered softly, and at the urging of Greet with a smile, he still rolled up his sleeves and went to work. Greet did not let them fight alone, and asked Moss to dispatch several invisible servants to help. Well, invisible servants and stuff like that can still do menial jobs. Just kill a pig, no one has taught it before, and it has not been recorded in the core of the Mage Tower. Bernard may also need to do it himself. Come on, there are 24 pigs. After a while, another Aerobristle pig was carried onto the experimental platform. Greet randomly divided 24 healthy, adult Aerobristle pigs into 4 groups, 2 experimental groups and 2 control groups. Each group has 6 heads, 3 males and 3 females. In the first group, percutaneous puncture, electric shock-induced ventricular fibrillation, and then direct current defibrillation. In the second group, a large amount of extract from the magic potion Foxglove was fed to induce ventricular fibrillation and direct current defibrillation was performed. In one night, Gretel completed the first 2 sets of experiments with the help of 2 assistants. Experimental results show that electric shock induces ventricular fibrillation, and the electric defibrillation power is between 420 and 450 joules. After 2 to 4 groups of electric shocks, sinus rhythm can be restored. Ventricular fibrillation was induced by feeding magic potion. The same electric defibrillation power and the same number of electric shocks could restore sinus rhythm. After using detoxification to remove the poison, ventricular fibrillation did not recur. The overall effect is satisfactory. Well, only Gretel is satisfied. As for Bernard, that was not satisfactory at all. So boss, we won't kill a single pig. Bernard ran up and down, carried 12 pigs, and performed 1 to 3 sets of chest compressions on average for each pig. He was sweating profusely from exhaustion. What made him even more depressed was that 12 of the 12 pigs survived and none of them died. Did you agree to finish cooking early and kill the food early? The whole night of working with him was completely in vain. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious, Greet reassured him with a smile. I also want to see how long these pigs can live after being defibrillated. If they can survive independently for 24 hours, or even 72 hours, it shouldn't be a big problem. What? It will take 3 more days to kill. Greet waited eagerly for them to survive. Bernard waited eagerly for 1 or 2 of them to die. However, the result was that after treatment with direct current defibrillation and restoration of sinus rhythm, treatment of moderate injury to the hearts of the 12 pigs, all of them were jumping happily. Each one survived successfully for 72 hours. It seems that the electric defibrillation effect is good. Gretel ignored the disappointed eyes of the barbarians and directed them with a smile to proceed to the next step. Come on, let's do the control group. The experimental progress of the control group was much slower than that of the experimental group. The third group, electric shock-induced ventricular fibrillation, treated with therapeutic techniques. Treat serious injuries. Ventricular fibrillation did not stop and sinus rhythm did not return. Greet maintained the rhythm, performing chest compressions for 2 minutes per group, and throwing a treat serious injury for 5 groups at a time. The pig's vital signs were still gradually weakening. Gretel gritted his teeth and raised his spell level. Cure fatal injuries. Well, it works. The electrocardiogram is a little tidier, but it has not returned to sinus rhythm. After another set of chest compressions, Gretel threw another cure fatal wounds. 2 level 4 spells cure fatal wounds finally brought the pig's life back. Compared with the level 2 spell direct current defibrillation, the overall consumption is much greater. No, today's spells are used up. Let me have a rest. Let's do the next one tomorrow. Bernard silently picked up the big pig and returned it to the pig pen. No pigs were killed today, so he no longer wanted to protest. In the third group, ventricular fibrillation was induced by electric shock and treated with therapeutic techniques. In the fourth group, ventricular fibrillation was induced by feeding large amounts of magic potion and treated with therapeutic techniques. In conclusion, treating serious injuries can only maintain vital signs and wait for the heart to slow down on its own. Only by treating fatal injuries can the effect of defibrillation be achieved and the disordered heart rhythm converted to sinus rhythm. So this is why Cure Fatal Wounds is a level 4 spell, Gretel thought silently and wrote quickly. The first level treat minor injuries and the second level treat moderate injuries only have the function of directional healing of injuries. The third level treat serious injuries have the function of maintaining vital signs. This was also his previous experience in using healing techniques. In fact, for minor and moderate injuries, vital signs will not drop significantly, and additional spell energy is indeed not needed to maintain. Only at the fourth level, treat fatal wounds, can you reverse the declining vital signs and restart certain functions. Due to the lack of understanding of human body functions in divine magic, it requires considerable consumption to do this. The treatment group consumes a lot of money and has a low success rate. Of the 12 pigs, 10 survived and 2 died. It is suspected that the experimenter was insufficient and the magic power was exhausted that day. In reality, it is almost impossible for Tier 3 warriors to obtain the rescue of level 4 treat fatal wounds. It can be seen that the development of DC defibrillation and electrocardioversion techniques is of great significance in saving their lives. Bernard, so after all this hard work, in the end, everyone only ate 2 pigs. The nucleic acid result came out today. I am negative. I pray that the community will be negative. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 5,000 starting coins reward. In total, your reward alone has exceeded 10,000 starting coins. I will add a new chapter for you today, Carrot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 790. The commander of the Magic Council's Third Fleet, Lord Knight James Drake, has been very troubled recently. Commander, we don't have enough manpower. Felix Winter, deputy commander of the fleet, came to his office once a day, and this topic always came up. Commander, we need to recruit more people. Fleet Logistics Chief William Gunson, I have to say it every time I see him. Commander, in the past 2 years, we have lost 20% of the knights in our fleet. If we don't recruit any more, we really can't do it. Even the bosun of the flagship and the charge captain had to yell a few times when they saw him. There is no way. The charge captain, who is responsible for boarding battles and close combat, has always had the highest requirements for combat effectiveness. Without knights, we would not dare to engage in boarding battles. If we did not dare to engage in boarding battles, it would be like losing an arm. James Drake was pulling his hair out with worry. The commander of the Magic Council's Third Fleet, the 9th level knight, has just been able to rest recently. Thanks to Tagaret, he has been extremely busy in the past 2 years. First, last year, we rushed north to the Herman Peninsula to meet the barbarians waiting there. After receiving the people, we sailed directly west to the northern tip of the New World, and then headed south along the coastline. Quietly merged with the other 3 fleets, blocked the Golden Fleet of the glorious Holy See, and launched a vigorous battle near Habana, the capital of the Storm Islands. Returned successfully, sent the guests back to their hometown, and repaired the fleet. Just after I took a breath, I spent all day and night hauling goods back from the New World. Forget about pulling other things, he actually pulled struvite. The precious capacity of the parliamentary ships was not used to transport gold, silver, pepper, tobacco, carmine, indigo, and all kinds of rich furs, but it was all used to carry stones that had been condensed by bird droppings over hundreds or thousands of years. They also have to dodge and dodge in the Storm Islands and cross the blockade of the glorious Holy See. After all this torment, not only the entire fleet was paralyzed, but also its vitality was severely damaged. Commander Drake checked the strength of his troops and found that about 1/3 of the lower-level sailors had been replaced. Of course, sailors are worthless. If you stop at any port and throw out the shining silver coins, you can immediately attract a group of people. But level 2, level 3, level 4 warriors, and even level 5 knights are so valuable. This is not something that can be recruited casually. The skill gap between the Navy and the Army is really huge. He went ashore to recruit a group of Army knights. After all, he couldn't swim or pull the sail ropes. Others were walking on flat ground on the bumpy deck. He swayed and vomited while holding a barrel. What do you want them to do? The space and capacity on the ship are limited. It is extremely valuable. It's such a waste to house a bunch of landlubbers. The most reliable method is, of course, training among sailors. The problem is that level 2, level 3, and level 4 warriors can be trained in any way as long as they are given sufficient food, hard training, and perfect guidance. However, knights. From a 4th level warrior to a knight, it is an essential transformation. It is the body, spirit, blood, breath, everything, condensed together, and open the mysterious door. How many fighters have practiced from the age of 15 to the age of 20, from the age of 20 to the age of 25, and from the age of 25 to the age of 30? As you get older, your energy and blood become exhausted, your physical strength begins to decline, and the strength you gather is still not enough to pass the test. If you are an ordinary warrior, you will naturally have to practice hard, practice harder, and practice until death. As long as there is some way, such as relying on the family, the temple of the god of war, and the military. There are various ways to improve the success rate of passing the level. For example, drugs. The burning blood potion distributed by the council and the burning warrior from the temple of the god of war can help warriors overcome this hurdle to a certain extent. The problem is that using drugs to overcome customs clearance is extremely dangerous. Commander Eric failed to break through and died. Bishop Ampton, a 7th level war priest stationed in his flagship, quietly came in to report the bad news. What a pity. Eric is a good young man, very brave. Drake took off his hat and put it on the table, bowed his head in silence. Bishop Ampton also made a prayer gesture. I tried my best to save him. Unfortunately, even after using all my magic, he still couldn't survive. Across the table, the two of them bowed their heads and were silent for a while. After a long while, Commander Drake put his hat back on and started the topic. Your Majesty, Bishop, how many warriors have failed to break through this year? There are already 15 of them. 10 of them can try again after 1 or 2 years of repair. 3 are seriously injured and have no choice but to retire. Eric and Frey. He lowered his head for the second time and prayed for guidance from the god of war for the young men who failed to break through the barrier and unfortunately died. Commander Drake sighed deeply. Master Bishop, is it possible to provide better medicine? The failure rate of young men is so high. Burning Warrior is already the best among the common potions in the temple. Those with a success rate of more than 80%, or those that can guarantee that the user will not be seriously injured or die after failure, are more than 10 times more expensive. And it has a price but no market. Only the children of great nobles, or the geniuses specially trained by the temple, may be able to use it. Not to mention, those who are so powerful that they will be specially trained by the temple. Such warriors will most likely be able to succeed on their own without the need for medicine. The result is that such secret potions are mostly provided to large noble families who are not willing to endure hardship and must be direct descendants of knights, only they have a particularly large demand for the safety of potions. The two of them frowned at each other. After a while, Bishop Ampton stood up and let out a long sigh. I'll think of a way. I'll think of a way again. He pulled back his hair, walked out unsteadily, and returned to the office to read books and information, looking for ways to break through. After 2 days of this, a loud noise suddenly sounded in the small building next to the fleet barracks. Boom! On the entire training ground, everyone turned to look at those who were running laps, carrying barrels, simulating rowing, and climbing masts and pulling sail ropes to simulate gang jumping. Then I saw Bishop Upton dancing, holding a volume of books, and rushed out with disheveled hair. I've found it! I've found it, this might work. Commander Drake hurriedly blocked him back to his office to prevent the war god Bishop's image from collapsing too much and making it difficult to use him when praying before battles in the future. Bishop Upton's eyes were shining brightly. He raised the book in front of him and almost hit his face. Look. Mr. Commander took it and looked at the cover first. Medical Research. Oh, the journals run by the medical branch of the Conjuration Department are basically the exclusive domain of this branch. Bishop Ampton once submitted a manuscript, but unfortunately it was not accepted. Let's look at the article again. An old acquaintance, Gretel Nordmark. The commander first had a favorable impression. No matter how fanciful the invention of Master Nordmark is, it is really useful. Whether it's the antidote to the sea plague or the solution to Fabuti's curse, even that rubber tube. Well, so what did this Nordmark mage do this time? Commander Drake looked hard, turned it from beginning to end, paused, slowed down twice as fast, and then turned it from beginning to end. Then, he raised his head and looked at the bishop with confused eyes. Is this spell useful in saving people? It's useful. Bishop Ampton's eyebrows were beaming, he was really beaming, and his grey eyebrows were almost flying out of his forehead. Look. Look. The experiment he did with foxgloves. The extract of foxgloves is indeed one of the main ingredients in Burning Warrior, or other similar potions. Commander Drake's eyes jumped. One of the main ingredients of these clearance potions is foxgloves. He really didn't know this. Although he was the commander of the fleet, he really didn't care about details such as the main ingredients in the potion. The main thing is that he relied on his own strength to pass the test without taking any medicine. For the medicine distributed in the fleet, he just applied to the parliament and that was it. Who cares what it is mainly made of? He flipped through the journal and lowered his head to read it for the third time. Foxgloves. Foxgloves, also known as witch gloves, fairy gloves, and dead man's bell, are a very powerful potion that can provide great energy to the heart. Bishop Upton's eyes were blazing. After swallowing a large dose of foxgloves extract, the heartbeat of the arrow-bristle pig increased rapidly and the blood pressure increased rapidly. Finally, the heart stopped, causing ventricular fibrillation. When it came to the last few words, his speaking speed slowed down, and he frowned and squeezed out. It was obvious that he was not familiar with the word ventricular fibrillation. After squeezing out the word, the speaking speed increased again. This is exactly the same as when the boys failed in the advanced level. Moreover, Master Nordmark's paper also talked about how to rescue when this happens. Second level magic. That direct current defibrillation and electrical cardioversion is just a second level magic. To be precise, it is just a combination of two first level magics. If it were not for the difficulty, it would not become a second level magic. Compared with the fourth level spell Cure Fatal Wounds, its consumption is much smaller, and the success rate is even higher than Cure Fatal Wounds. So, we can use this magic to rescue the young man who failed to pass the level. Commander Drake finally understood the paper. Based on the bishop's explanation, we came to the conclusion. So, have you learned this magic? No, Bishop Apton collapsed instantly in frustration. The distance between this magic and divine magic is really too big. One thing is that he didn't even learn the prerequisite electrocardiogram magic. There is a real distance between healers like them who rely on the grace of God to cast spells and magicians. Moreover, Master Nordmark mentioned in the paper, the bishop stood up, moved to Commander Drake's side, turned over a few pages of the journal, and pointed to one of the paragraphs for him to read. The amount of energy used in this spell is a preliminary estimate based on zombie and animal experiments. So far, no large-scale clinical trials have been conducted on patients. So, if we want to increase the warrior's success rate, we can ask him for help. With the character of Master Nordmark, he should be happy to come over, right? Maybe even the treatment costs can be saved, or you can get a discount. There has been a lot of action recently, a large number of ships need to be built and repaired, and the Navy's military expenses are also tight. A large batch of soy products has arrived. A large number of buns have arrived. Breakfast and vegetarian supplements are available. Oh la 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 la. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Foxglove, also known as Digitalis, is also known as foxglove, witch glove, fairy glove, and dead man's bell. They are called foxgloves because it is said that the evil spirit gave the foxglove flowers to the fox, and asked the fox to put the flowers on his feet to reduce the sound of his footsteps as he foraged among the foxgloves. A very powerful cardiotonic agent that contracts the heart muscle. Therefore, it is also a very suitable medicine to be used to assist warriors in passing levels and becoming knights. Well, I nodded. Of course, if you take too much medicine and cause foxglove poisoning, you will have ventricular fibrillation every minute. The whole foxglove plant is poisonous, so don't try it out of curiosity, and don't let animals at home eat it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 791. Greet thought about using his own connections to collect a group of patients with cardiovascular disease, mainly wealthy businessmen and so on, and provide them with low-cost diagnosis and treatment to accumulate data. Anyway, Most of those people have high blood lipids and high blood pressure. Greet thought about looking up the children with congenital heart disease in the past to see if there were any who were still alive who could not be cured before, and provide free medical treatment to accumulate data. Gretel even thought about using his senior brother's connections to conduct a comprehensive physical examination on the magician's followers to see if any of the older knights had cardiovascular problems. Anyway, senior brother Carlyle has a high-level knight follower. Other senior brothers, sisters, and other high-level mages should also have them. If you give benefits or something to your followers, they shouldn't refuse. But Greet never expected that the Navy would come to the door first. Commander Drake, Chief of Logistics Gunson, and Bishop Ampton made an appointment to visit Oak Grove Medical Clinic. Do you want me to participate in medical treatment? When the 4th level warrior fails to attack the knight, you want to help watch and maybe give him a hand. Yes. No problem, Greet replied happily. Before Commander Drake could show his joy, he changed the subject. But what? Next to Commander Drake, Chief of Logistics William Gunson has already begun rapid mental calculations and re-evaluating the fleet's funds. By the way, when I hired the Nordmark mage to work before, he was a 4th level arcanist and a 3rd level mage. He was responsible for long-term project funds from the council and did not use the fleet's account. Now, the Nordmark mage is already a 5th level arcanist and a 7th level mage. The fleet comes forward to ask him to work. How much should he pay? But first, this matter must go through the formal procedures of the Parliament, Greet replied seriously. A formal application must be submitted to confirm the clinical research project as a new type of medical magic, and the fleet will submit a commission. Does it need to be so troublesome? The Chief of Logistics frowned slightly. Gretel opened his eyes wide. Of course. This is a new type of medical magic. It has not been certified by the Parliament and is registered as official magic. It is still in the experimental stage and the risks are very high. Of course, we must make it clear. Experiment with new treatment methods and new techniques. Of course you have to apply for approval. Otherwise, if death or disability occurs, who is responsible? If the procedures are formal, it can be regarded as medical research, and the hospital will handle everything for you. If the procedures are irregular, if you start practicing medicine illegally, from license revocation to jail time, a one-stop service is waiting for you. So, I need to submit this application. Greet spread his hands. Of course it must be submitted by the fleet, otherwise, do you expect me to submit it myself? Chief Gunson nodded silently. Okay, he just knows that this is his job again. As a civil servant and a logistician, all these complicated paperwork would be thrown at him anyway. What about number 2? Is it money? Do you want money? God bless you, but don't ask for too much. Chief Gunson was prepared. If the mage Gret Nordmark asked for a high price, for example, he quoted the standard price for cure fatal wounds together with the rescue equipment, he would have to have a good talk with him. The worth of a knight is limited, and the worth of an advanced knight who has failed and is dying is even more limited. The rescue cost of each warrior is calculated based on 2 second-level spells. The fleet can still afford it, and it does not suffer a loss, plus a few 4th-level spells. Well, Bishop Ampton is stationed in the fleet, and as part of his job, just throw in a few 4th-level spells. To outsource treatment services, to be honest, a warrior is not worth as much as a 4th-level spell. He was extremely vigilant, made a draft, and was ready to bargain at any time. It doesn't matter if he talks too much. He is just the chief of logistics anyway. When everyone gets choked up, the commander can still step in to smooth things over. Then, he saw Greet smile slightly, a little embarrassed, but answered without any doubt. Second, the advanced work must be carried out near my mage tower. The inspection must be completed beforehand. Director Gunson? Commander Drake? Bishop Ampton, it's the papers you published before, those CT, cardiac ultrasound, and so on? Do you need angiography? Greet felt a great sense of confidence. You have read every one of my papers. That's great, it saves me wasting my time explaining it. It is so much easier to communicate when there is a healer present. The blood pressure must be measured, and the electrocardiogram and cardiac ultrasound must also be checked. The main purpose is to see whether the cardiovascular system is healthy and whether the heartbeat is normal. Greet happily gave them the order. There is no need for angiography. Unless the results are abnormal and further examination is needed, there is no need for angiography. CT is still required. For warriors to pass the test, the cardiovascular pressure will be greater. It is necessary to rule out vascular disease in advance. So does it have to be done in the Mage Tower? Bishop Apton was a little hesitant. If you don't do it in the Mage Tower, you can still claim to the outside world that the warrior's advancement is carried out under the light of the god of war. If you do it in the Mage Tower, it will be clear that it is led by the Parliament. I'm currently in the Mage Tower. Greet spread his hands and said. CT examination currently requires the calculation of the tower spirit of the Mage Tower in order to get the results as quickly as possible. Although several other examinations are not necessary, if you want to retain the data, it is best to connect it to the center of the Mage Tower. Otherwise, a storage crystal card. One card has 10 contribution points. After one person completed a set of checks, not counting the cost of casting the spell, more than 100 gold coins flew away just for the crystal card. By doing the inspection at the Mage Tower, these costs can be saved. In the face of financial pressure, and in the face of the death blows of the logistics chief, the commander and the bishop could only bow their heads. Just drag it, you can save money, which is always a good thing. There are papers published in medical research, there are fleets coming out to go through the formalities, and projects from the Parliament are approved quickly. Anyway, you don't have to spend too much money. Gretel asked for a reward of 1,000 contribution points, with the council providing 20% and the fleet providing 80%. 200 contribution points was nothing to the council, and the clerk below easily approved it without going to the review meeting. Of course, as a price, all clinical data, as well as the data collected during the experiment, belonged to Greet. The next day after receiving the approval, the carriage rolled and rushed to the tower. 5 knights and 20 warriors stood neatly in 3 rows under the tower, looking up at the 9-story Mage Tower. It is said that our future advancement will be carried out here. Mage. Let the mage treat us. Are you sure there is no problem? Hush. We are the fleet of the council. Let the mages of the council treat you, there will be no problem. I'm not talking about this, I'm saying that the ones who treated us before were always priests from the god of war temple. Now it's a magician, is it really okay? I don't know if others have problems, but this one will definitely be fine. Amid the discussion, the knight captain leading the team came back slowly and raised his voice. This Nordmark mage once participated in the research and development of sea plague treatment medicine. Until now, we are not troubled by this disease because of him. Ah! It's him. There was a roar of discussion among the soldiers. A young soldier with yellow hair and freckles took a step forward and excitedly grabbed his comrades in front. It's him. I know. 4 years ago, I got sea plague, and when I was lying in a daze in the wounded barracks, it was he who cured me. This mage is very kind. He washed our wounds and cut them off rotten meat. You don't think we are dirty at all? That's him. During the last Great Plague, my aunt fell ill, thanks to him leading his students to save people. This mage's words will definitely not harm us. The soldiers were pushing and shoving, squeezing and bumping into each other, and the volume was 10 times louder. The leading knight looked on coldly and finally stopped. Okay. You also know that, advanced knights, the risk is very high, and the risk is even greater if you use medicine. The commander did a lot of favors and asked the Nordmark mage to take action to save your lives. Now, the platoon good team, stop talking. Someone is coming out of the mage tower. Greet walked out of the tower with a smile. He looked at these soldiers with joy, just like looking at the fresh, tender, and juicy green vegetables in his own field. These are all data. It's all fresh data. Even if no one needs his treatment, it's better not to. What he hopes most is that everyone can pass the level safely and smoothly. He can first save a wave of intuitive physical data of 4th level warriors and 5th level knights. Got it? Come, everyone, line up, don't crowd, come one by one. A knight will lead a small team, go upstairs one by one, and test the basic data first. There was a slight commotion in the team. Then, a knight and 4 warriors followed Gretel and filed into the tower. The further inside, the quieter the discussion became. When they got on the elevator and started to ascend, all the soldiers closed their mouths uneasily. 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor. The numbers on the lift keep changing. With a final ding, the door slid open to both sides. Gretel took the lead and walked quickly to the center of the mage tower. Here, take off your coat, make sure there is no metal on your upper body, sit on the floating dish, and sit up straight. Let's do a CT first. That one is slower and requires a long time for the tower spirit to calculate. Why are you standing still? Behind them, the 4 warriors retreated step by step, their backs almost touching the wall. Mr. Knight was slightly better, but he only maintained his standing position and did not shrink back all the time. His hands were behind his back, and his whole body was stiff. It was obvious that he was afraid of touching something. This golden treasure box, can you hold it a little further? The whole thing is made of gold. I don't know how many gems are inlaid in it. The lines between gems are so bright, they can't be silver threads, they must be mithril. This thing, as well as the crystal ball next to it, the crystal pillar under the crystal ball, if we damage a little bit, will it directly lead to bankruptcy? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Bugfield for the 100,000 starting coins. This is the second leader of the boss. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 10,000 starting coins. Well, for 10 consecutive days starting from today, we will add more updates for the leader. The leader of the alliance will reward you with 10,000 extra updates after all the extra updates are finished.